Hey, what's up, Agents for Life? Welcome to podcast 239. This is a special podcast near and dear to my heart. Why? Because this week is the week 5 years ago that I left my job. I turned in my notice. I walked away. I embraced the unknown. I embraced uncomfortableness, and I've never looked back since. And it's been an amazing journey. So I am here to tell you a little bit about my backstory in celebration of my 5 year anniversary of being free from my job, full-time Equis, and I couldn't be happier here. So this is so that you can understand a little bit about where I came from, some of the struggles that I went through. So if you'll pardon me for a little bit, I'm going to go off script and just talk about me, but there is a purpose behind all this because I have something that I want to teach you here in regards to all of it. So a lot of you don't know, but my backstory, there's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of failure. And so I affectionately am calling this podcast my 19 failures because I counted them. I went through all my archives, all my notes, and all the crazy things that I've done over the years. And I'm going to take you way back, starting in the year 2000, soon after I graduated from college. Okay, actually, I was still in college in 1999, 1998. I was selling t-shirts. I was printing t-shirts and I'd go to a nearby pageant. I was selling t-shirts. I had them in some stores, some local stores, and that's what helped pay my college tuition. So it didn't go very far, but um, it didn't really last because I moved on to other things. But that was my first one. If I go way back to my early roots as a young budding entrepreneur, just trying to do my own thing because I worked at a screen printing shop, and so I had access to print machinery and equipment. So that was the first one. I did a bunch of t-shirts and they sold pretty well, but discontinued that once I moved on. By 2004, I'd gotten a job and was laid off. In 2004, I started up a freelance business out of necessity. So I started freelancing. 6 months, I hustled, I hit the street till I found another job. Now, I was young, newlywed with two kids. Well, I shouldn't say newlywed, but young, married, two kids, starving artist, right? That was my degree. I had an art degree. And in 2004, I had to do some freelance work. And so it was just me. I started up my own business. It was just Matthew Wilson Design. And I didn't know any better. And I was just hustling the street, knocking doors, cold knocking, trying to get clients. And I scrapped out just enough to get me going, keep me going for about 6 months until I found a better job. At that time, I was not ready to not have a job. So to earn my own money on my own merits scared the bejeebies out of me. Trust me, it was very uncomfortable and I just wasn't ready to stay there. So I went back into job mode, but secretly inside, I wanted my freedom. I knew that having a job wasn't the way that I wanted to go. So this was back as far as 2004. Okay, 2008 comes around, and I'm kind of tired of my job. I'm looking at other things. And a friend of mine, brother-in-law, he earned $90,000 in 3 months, and he comes telling us all about it. He's all excited about this new software that helps you learn, education, helps you learn how to do real estate. And I'm going to leave names out of here to protect the innocent and the guilty both, but sounded like a really good deal at the time. And it was an $18,000 package deal. Some of you might know who I'm talking about, but I enrolled in the whole thing, signed up, got a loan, right? And went into real estate thinking I was going to sell. And you can sell the software. It was kind of a multi-level type of a thing. And guess what? It didn't last. So that came and left. I had to fight my way back out of that debt that I incurred. But by 2009, I did learn enough about real estate that I wanted to start my own real estate company. So I found a partner on Craigslist. Now, this is a different story, so don't laugh at me. He's a great guy. This guy had been doing real estate for 20 some odd years. We hit it off really well, and we decided to go into business together. So we formed an LLC called Homeboys, and our vision was to flip properties. This was in 2009 when there was all these foreclosures on the market. Well, the business plan looked good. We got our first two properties. He had never lost on a deal in 28 years, I think, of flipping properties. I don't know why he thought I would make a good partner, but for whatever reason, he felt inclined to do so. Guess what? We lost on both of them, and he had to file bankruptcy. I was the one that carried the debt, so I had to fight my way back out of my debt again at my job. So my wife's probably thinking I'm crazy. Kids are growing up. I don't make a lot of money, trust me. I remember having $4,000 or $5,000 on my credit card, and that felt like I was treading water. So that was the next failure. Homeboys, it didn't last past the two deals, and he had to go move, had to sell his house, had to sell everything, went bankrupt. I didn't go bankrupt, fortunately, but the company went under. 2009, I'm back at it again. After that, I'm writing now. I do have a passion for writing, so I get into children's books. And I wrote 3 children's books, and I pitched them to 30 or 40 different publishers. One was called Bill and Will. One was called Lasagna, yeah. And then The Wart Fairy, which is just a silly kid's book. And then I even produced in a little later that same year, an episode of Princess Potamus, which is a story that I would tell my kids. So I brought it to life, thinking that maybe I could do something with it. Is this idea of an awkward princess that doesn't have any manners, and she's really unrefined because she was found and raised by a pack of hippos, and so she's called Princess Potamus. Anyways, did that. It didn't go anywhere. The stories didn't go anywhere. I was going to be a writer. I was going to be this New York Times bestseller. I wanted my name on a bunch of children's books, and none of them went anywhere, despite months and months of writing and pitching to different publishers, getting rejected over and over and over. But I was determined to get out of my job, and so I decided, you know what? However I do this, I'm going to create my story, and I'm going to create a podcast, and I'm going to tell people what I'm doing, what I'm trying out, what's working, what's not working. And that can be my following. So I started a podcast back in 2009 when podcasting was like still hardly a thing. It was called Watch Me Get Free. And the picture on there, I don't know if it's still up. I don't think it is, but the picture on there is me holding 2 flags standing on my car against it was just this heroic image that I set up. My daughter took the picture. She was like 8 years old at the time. And it was just podcast after podcast of me telling the world what I did. And 26 episodes later, it just fizzled off. I just couldn't keep it going, wasn't going anywhere. And that was my next failure. 2010 is when I got into inventing. So had a lot of ideas. I created a company called Zembrio, and there was the swing grip, the aqua twist, rod pod, shower hand, trampoline fountain, the happy helper, box handles, the box gripper, progressive brake lights, which I still love. Somebody's got to do that. Mini stick juice extractor, pole pod, self-cleaning hairbrush, wiper washers. There's a whole bunch more. And I spent years developing ideas, prototypes, sometimes building the actual prototype, but at least the model, and selling or trying to sell sell sheets to manufacturers to take an idea and then pay me a small commission. So those were the many that I listed were some. There were many more that I did, and so you can see how much time that probably took from my day, my evenings, weekends, whatever. I was trying to get something going because I just knew I didn't want to have a job anymore. So inventing sounded like a really fun way to go. Turns out it's pretty hard. Well, that ran out of steam, and the next one in 2010, one of my ideas that I ran with a little bit was called the Truth Fairy. And it took the idea of a tooth fairy, and it's this program for parents to try and teach their kids aphorisms. And instead of giving them, in exchange for a tooth, it's a little saying that you could put on the door, and then the kids could recite it or memorize it. You give them $1 instead of just losing a tooth and paying them $1. So we're trying to teach them, to memorize quotes and things that are inspirational. And I was going to put this all together into a little package thing that you could sell to parents, and they could put it on, the kid's door at night or whatever. And it's called the Truth Fairy instead of the Tooth Fairy. So that didn't go anywhere. I actually had the domain for a while and sold it. I think I made a couple $100 on that, actually, what I was pretty excited about, because I never really made money on a domain sale. But that one I sold on. And then I got into more of a traditional business, and we started up a uniform/printing company called Sunny Day Prints. Worked out of my garage. We did a lot of uniforms for local schools. I did a lot of I knew screen printing from my college days, so it was easy for me to pick back up. And we did a lot of design and t-shirts and stuff. And we kept that going for a few years. And that was actually a pretty good business. It's just tough to make a lot of money in that industry. It's a lot of manual labor, and you can't charge enough to make it worthwhile. So it paid the bills for a while, but I knew it was never going to be like a huge thing. It was just a fun little side hustle. We eventually closed our doors a few years later. So that lasted for a few years. Meanwhile, though, 2012 comes along and I had this brilliant idea called 24 Questions. The only reason it was 24 questions is because 1 through 23 was all taken. The domains 24questions.com was available. So I'm like, all right, let's do that. What the idea was I'm going to be the journalist. I'm going to go find these high profile people that no one else can touch. And I'm going to ask them the questions that my followers ask me. So they'll pose questions. They'll vote on each other's questions. I'll take the top 24 and I will go ask that person in an interview those questions, and I'll give it back to my audience. And I thought, you know what? Who wouldn't subscribe to that? Who wouldn't love the idea of, being able to ask Elon Musk a question and vote my question into the top, and I'm just the spokesperson. So I did 3 or 4 interviews, a couple of them fairly high profile. Luis Gonzalez, who was the home run MVP from the Diamondbacks, I interviewed him. I interviewed Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He's a big name around here. Sharon Lechter, who co-authored Rich Dad, Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. I interviewed her. So just didn't get any traction. It turned out that nobody really cares about that like I thought they would. So that came and left. In 2013, I created a little study guide for the scriptures that actually still sells today. I just get a little income from it in bookstores all across the country. So later, a couple of years later, I invented a card game. I didn't really come up with the rules. It's just a tweak on an existing set. And I called it Hogwash, and I designed it with these pigs, and it still sells today as well. 2014, I started a company called Chasm. And the idea for that, I didn't really create an LLC or anything, but I built out a whole business plan and I started pitching it. Didn't really get it off the ground. Again, you see a pattern here, right? You're probably starting to judge me. Like, who's this guy that just keeps failing? Well, to some of you, I want to give you some hope. All right. And I'm going to kind of bring all this to some key points here at the end. But Chasm was a way to help kids cross that huge gap between high school and the rest of their lives. And I call that gap a giant chasm that a lot of kids fall into that they don't sometimes ever even get out of, because nobody teaches these youth about finances, about taxes, about smart investing, about mindset, and about hustle, and about habits, all these things. And so it's kind of like a youth camp, because I have a really soft spot in my heart for youth. So Chasm was born and Chasm died, just like the other 13 so far ideas that I had tried to get off the ground. I started a blog at this point. I was heavy into inventing, and so I put everything on a blog called Idea Mess. And there were a lot of bloggers at that time that were doing very, very well. That was a thing, and you could monetize your blog. And I learned all about it, and I thought there's no reason why I can't. I feel like I'm a fairly decent writer. And so I got that, and I don't think I got a single subscriber. And I had typed and tried to promote probably 40 or 50 blogs, and just didn't get anybody. And, it's hard to keep going. Now, on any of these, this is a little side note, I could have kept going and could have hustled and hustled, because really that's what it takes. I just was learning and I ran out of steam. And instead of keeping on going, I just moved on to the next idea. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not saying I should or shouldn't have, but I'm saying that's what I did. After the blog, Kook was born, Kook Studios. This was a real company, actually fundraised. I got donations from investors, and I created an application. Okay, this is where apps were hard, and they were all the thing, App Store and everything back in 2016. This was 9 years ago. And there was a reality show called Planet of the Apps. And there were 4 judges. Okay, Gary Vee was one, Jessica Alba, will.i.am, and Gwyneth Paltrow. Those were the 4. And it's really hard to even find anything on it. But it was the thing, because they actually, after I applied, they invited me on with my app. So I got to create a 60-second elevator pitch that I had memorized and I said over and over and over ad nauseum. And I came down this escalator. It's all on camera. There was this huge studio they flew me out to California for all this. Came down an escalator and did my pitch. And at the bottom, had this little interaction. And then there's these X's or green check marks, red X or green check mark. And each of the four people that I just told you got to vote. Okay. This was how they had set it all up. The stage was immaculate. It's huge, full on production. Apple was put on by Apple. So they spared no expense. And I got 4 red X's, every single one. And so I was like, that was it. I'm not moving forward with any of these people. Had any of them given me a green light, they would have mentored me and funded moving that forward to really take it to the next level. And I was really hoping for Gary Vee because I'm kind of a follower, fan of his, but it wasn't to be. I did hang out with him though. He came up afterwards and hung out with us and chatted a little bit. So it was pretty cool to hang out with Gary Vee. And I learned a lot from that, but it also fizzled. And those that invested, unfortunately, lost their money, including myself, because I was one of the investors. 2017, I had this crazy harebrained idea to do celebrity pet portraits, is what I called it. What I was going to do is try and build following by drawing, because that was my background. I love drawing, finding people's pets, celebrities' pets. Elon Musk, for example, if he has a little poodle, you just start drawing it and try and get his attention so I can piggyback on his followers and then ultimately sell these portraits of just kids or just pets, right? Because I love drawing pets, these pencil sketches. So anyways, it's called Celebrity Pet Portraits. I did a few portraits. I think I did 3 or 4 of them. And the time to income ratio, the time spent to the amount of money I was making will prove to be not worth it. And that's why they have the whole phrase, the poor starving artist. Yes, it's true. So there's that. 2017 as well, I come around another idea. It's called 3x5 goals. It's this little system that I had been using for many years to do my goals. And it was just on 3x5 cards. And I decided, you know what? Why don't I make this a thing and see if I can market this as a product? So I did and couldn't get that off the ground. And to show you how hungry I was, again in 2017, I remember I worked at an ad agency through all of this. This was my job. I started an idea. I never did anything with it, but I was this close to starting an idea called Agency Dropout. And that would be the name of the URL. And it's a marketing company of people who are the opposite of ad agencies, who all the things that are wrong with using an ad agency. So it would be like making a huge splash in my industry. It would be like me completely leaving and turning my back on everything that I had been representing for 15 years and saying, that's all wrong now, do it my way. It was very tempting because I found a lot of reasons why I could make that work. But alas, I didn't have to, because in 2018 is when I came across Equis. And here I am. So now you know my crazy background. Now, all of those, with the exception of 2, which are still selling today, but selling very, very small. I wouldn't consider a huge success by any stretch of the imagination, but pretty much the rest of them are all failures. So that's why I call it my 19 failures. And there's actually, I think there's more. This is just what I dug up. But you guys, I was you have no idea how hungry I was to get out of having a job and being my own boss. Now, I liked my job. The people there were great. I just didn't like the idea of having a job. And I wanted my freedom. I wanted my freedom more than anything. Now, you could look back on any one of those and say, yeah, you could have made that work if you'd have kept going. It's a good idea, bad idea. I don't know, whatever. And none of it really even matters to me. What matters to me is that I learned on each of these failures. Each of these failures made me a better person, made me more determined. I learned who I was. I learned who I wasn't. I learned skills that I didn't have. I made connections that I didn't have. And when you look at your failures, how do you see them? Do you see them just as nothing more than a waste of time? Or do you see them as a step in the right direction? A step takes you up, and it also takes you closer. If you're climbing the stairs, those are steps, right? You're going up and over. Okay. It's a step in the right direction. Every single failure is building slowly a pile, and that pile at the end of the road is called success. If you're going through stuff, I totally understand. If you're broke, if you're upside down, close to bankruptcy, if you're the one that partner went bankrupt and you're left carrying all the debt and you got to now get yourself out of debt. 2 or 3 times I've been that person. I've invested in things and it's completely gone belly up. Over and over and over, you can see I've tried things and almost every single one has failed in some form or another. And I will take the bulk of that responsibility myself. I could have made some of them work and I didn't. I just ran out of steam, ran out of money, ran out of time, right? They're all excuses at the end of the day. I feel like I'm a different person now because of Equis. I feel like if I went back and tried some of these over again, I may have just stuck with some of them just because of the tenacity that I've learned being a life insurance agent. But now where I am now, I would never want to go back and do any of one of those things. Inventing, maybe. That's the one thing. When I get into my retirement, I think I might go back to inventing just because it's fun. It's not profitable until you get one that takes off, but it was fun. So besides that, though, I love where I am. I love Equis. I love our system. I love our team. Is it full of failures? Is it full of disappointment? Is it full of struggle? Is it full of challenges? Yes, 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 and yes, absolutely. But that's what has paved the road for me to be where I am and for you to get to where you want to be. So if you're having a rough time, if you're going through some failures, listen, I hope this gives you some inspiration. You just got to keep going. You just got to keep at it. You just got to keep trying. Don't give up. Don't quit. The only way that you guarantee that you will fail is by quitting. I've proved that 19 times here. And here I am, number 20, Equis Financial. We're going to the top, baby. And I am super excited to be here. I've got some big plans, some big things that we're working on. I'm glad you're on the team. Thank you for listening, by the way. Let me talk about myself just a little bit. It's my 5-year anniversary, so this is the only time this is going to happen. I promise we'll be back to stuff about you and about sales in the weeks to come. But this one had a special place in my heart, so I wanted to tell you about my history. And the 5-year anniversary is just it's kind of a big deal for me. So very excited about everything. But thank you. Back at it, right? Let's go. So when you need my help, whatever you need, I'm here for you. I want to see you through some of your failures and help push you on to overcome your barriers. And that's really where my focus is now. So thank you and have a great week. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.